How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the latest episode of the Why the Mountains podcast, with me, your host, Stephen Farley. If you are a hill walker or a mountaineer, or just someone with a love of stories of adventure, this is the podcast for you. In this first series, we are exploring the history of Irish mountaineers on Everest, from the earliest pioneering days right up to the latest commercial expeditions. If you haven't listened to our earlier podcasts, I suggest you do that first, before continuing with this latest episode. This is the last in a 4-part mini-series of podcasts on Pat Falvey, one of Ireland's premier mountaineers. Please do check out the previous episodes introducing Pat. In this episode, we hear about Pat's return to Everest in 2003 and 2004, with a new generation of Irish mountaineers looking to fulfill their dreams of the mountain. To begin this final episode with Pat, I get straight into what it was like for him to go to the summit. Pat made his attempt on Everest in 1995 from the north side, and one of the most imposing features of that route is the second step, a rocky outcrop located around 8,610 metres. There is a particularly challenging section of the step at the top, about 5 vertical metres, to which a Chinese expedition attached a ladder in 1975. The ladder has since been replaced by a new one, but almost all mountaineers use this ladder to get to the top of the step. I asked Pat about this and other parts of the climb and how he felt at this point.
It was amazing. It was just totally amazing. It was like, this is where history was made. This is where Mary and Irvine, did they fall or did they not fall? This is where we're going to go out onto the top ridge, and go to the step 3 and then onto the summit, which was the size of a snooker table or a table 5.5 miles up in the sky. And we were here. Remember, this is the first time. And as we approached and crossed that traverse and then came to this ladder that was put up by the Chinese, and I never forget getting onto the ladder, and as I got onto the ladder, there was a part of it loose and it was shaking. And then when I looked below me, there was a guy who fell the previous year or 2 years previous, and I could see him below us. And then I got out getting onto the top one, and then calling to my partner, James Allen, who became the youngest in the world at the time to have climbed Everest. He was 21, and I looking down, I said, "Come on, James." Then he's actually making his way up the ladder and he's kind of nervous. And then he gets to the point, there's an amazing point there where you have to let go of the ladder and come across onto a small step. And then you're up onto the top of the second step. And then it's like, he's there and he won't make the move, because as he was standing below, I blocked him down and just passed him the size of a bloody television. And then when he looked down, he's seen the body below. So he was a bit nervous. And so then when he was coming up, he said, "I can't make the move." And I'm going "Oh, fuck, if I have to come to this point, we're just up there. We're on the summit." And then he said, "I can't make the move." He said, "I'm going to go down." And I goes, "What the fuck? You can't go down." And then I said, "For Christ's sake, will you make the move?" And he said, "We agreed, if I can't make it, I'm going to go down, right?" So I sadly turned away my back on the second step as he was about to go down. And myself and Mike continued on to the third step. But as I was going to the third step, I looked behind, and there he was. He had made the move. But in the move, just to tell you, he took off his gloves to make the moves up on those steps. Later, he was to lose 2 fingers. Getting to the summit was absolutely amazing because it was and I know people that stood there would say the same thing. For me, there was a huge pride about what my grandmother bait into me: if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. What my dad said: dream and dream big, collect the bonus. We were collecting the bonus, right? And then we're standing in this amazing place on top of the world. And at that stage, I was so proud. And probably the controversy came in here now that I put my hand in my pocket. I took out the tricolour, put it on the summit of the ice axe, flung it high in the air, and said, "Yes, I'm standing on top of the fucking world." And that was later to be interpreted that I denigrated and I was claiming to be the first Irish person. No, it's coming, not Dawson, not anybody in the main fraternity, but it was used as a politically divisive situation. And that's what happened at the time. But I never thought of it that way.
The sense I get from Pat is that it mattered to him as an Irish person reaching the summit, but he knew he wasn't the first, and he was at peace with that. Just getting to the top, a dream he was now seeing come to fruition, was special, and that he was following in the footsteps of Dawson Stelfox just 2 years previously didn't affect Pat in any way. I sense a genuine joy from him, not only of his own achievement, but that of Dawson as well, and all the other Irish mountaineers who dared to dream big and come to Everest to try and fulfil those dreams. He did indeed raise the Irish flag on the summit, as many others since him have done, as I imagine I would do, given half the chance. But was it a slight against someone else? I really don't think so. As every mountaineer knows, the summit is only halfway. Now it was time to descend.
Well, what happened when we got there, I was very conscious I had run out of oxygen, right? And yeah, we were using oxygen on this occasion, even though I've been without oxygen into the death zone before. But when I ran out of oxygen, I was conscious of the fact that I didn't want to be hanging around. I started thinking of my family. And so I said to the lads, look, I'm heading away down. They stayed, James went for a pee. And Mick was with James. But what happened is Mick's oxygen ran out as well. So I said I'd see at the top of the second step where I had seen there was a couple of bottles of oxygen there. I wasn't too sure whether they were empty or not, and I was going to grab one. So I got down and I started testing them, and there was nothing there, right? So then I waited for James and Mike. They came, but at this stage I could see as Mike was coming across from the third step that he was falling all around the place, and I could see James was fairly concerned about it. So when we got to the second step, what happened is we had the fixed rope going down. So James actually abseiled down. So I said, go down. And then like what would happen is that if you pulled on the abseil rope, but you know yourself on rescue, that's actually, if someone like let their hand go, you can control it. So I knew at this stage that mightn't be able to control it. So what happened, James went down, and then like what I had to make sure is we got Mike onto the abseil rope. So we placed him on the abseil rope and then kind of pushed him over. So I would be coming down behind him, so if he was getting stuck. And it was really, really scary, because now we were actually abseiling down. We had Mike, who was partly comatose from the fact that when you run out of oxygen, it's like being in a plane. You can go down straight away, you know, like say, you've often seen it there, like with the stories of if you cut the oxygen in a plane, like everyone would nearly be dead in 2 minutes. So we slowly actually lowered him down the face, with him being, and James controlling it with the brake. Like it's a technique we learn in mountain rescue, as you know yourself. And so we got him down to the bottom of the second step, but now we had a traverse to do. And the traverse is fairly a tricky traverse at that altitude. Like maybe at this level, it's not too bad at all. And there's a fixed rope. So therefore, what we had to do is we went front and back. And as we were moving across at this stage, like there was, the high camp was at about, I think it was about eight something. We had a high camp there, and there was a Sherpa there. We had no Sherpa with us. So then what happened was, there was, I think it was Larpa was dispatched at the time. So by the time we were halfway across the traverse, he was there coming with the oxygen. But before they got there, as Mick was traversing across, it's like being like drunk. That's what high altitude is like. You know, you stumble and you lose your peripheral vision. And next, all of a sudden, he slipped. And he shot down the face, but he was onto the fixed rope. So then, like, as he was there, like, sprawled out, you know, like, and even though it's a very easy thing, you think actually to get up, like, I think it was about a 45-degree slope. But, like, it took him everything, like, and we were trying to pull him up, strengthen on the thing. And next, we said, that's it, he's there. And just as we made one more step, he slipped off again. Right? So that was nightmarish, because, like, half of us was afraid he'd pull the anchors. Right? And in turn, like, we were still on that, like, traverse ledge. Like, it's only size, what is it, 1 foot or 1'6". Like, so it kind of came into a steep angle. There was a pat on it, and then it kind of went to a steep angle above it. But if we came loose on this, like, we'd be shooting off down like at a ferocious space down into the abyss. So then we got him across, and Larpa had brought a bottle of oxygen. So then the three of us got him back to high camp, and Russell Bryce's team was there. So they took us into the tent. And then what we did is we stayed a couple of hours there, but we knew we had to get him down. So then on the way down, like to the North Col, which was going to be our next stop, and then down from the North Col back to Advanced Base Camp, we were pulling and dragging him. But what happened as we were, and he was moving, but like, I remember having my mouth open, like, and not realizing what was about to happen next. So when we got back, and it took him about a week to recover, so like we thought he was going to die. What happened is I had burnt all the inside of my palate. So now I couldn't eat or drink. So I was literally spoon feeding like for about 4 or 5 days afterwards when the burn, like I got sunburn inside under my palate. And
was that very painful?
It was, yeah, like it was no joke, like, you know, like it was sore, but we were still elated at that point in time that we had got back safely. And then, of course, like we headed out. There was more in the team. They had been there in the previous few days, but there was just 3 of us in the summit at that point in time when we were there. So like there was no kind of rescue like at that stage. And again, I felt completely confident in my abilities, having learned, and was I so glad I was in mountain rescue for the amount of time I was in there. And James was amazing, you know, like, and James was my partner, and I remember coming together, and I said to him, I said, he kind of picked me and I picked him, right? And he said, like, I said, why did you pick me? And he said, because you have experience. And I said, I've only a small bit of experience. And he said, why did you pick me? I said, because you'd be young and hungry, so you'd push me.
A vivid description, one fraught with danger due to lack of oxygen, extreme tiredness, altitude, and treacherous terrain. Anyone who climbs mountains will know that often accidents happen on the way down, sometimes when you are almost home. Pat is in the mountain rescue like me, and has often been called out to help people who have taken a stumble coming down from the summit, but in the death zone, there is no real rescue to speak of. Climbers rely on their own strength, skills and experience, and the help of their teammates and Sherpas. Often this is not enough, and many people have died on the way down after reaching the summit of Everest, after completing the seemingly difficult part. There are many bodies all over Everest that lie as testimony to the extreme danger faced by anyone attempting to climb the mountain. Those who make it down and make it home have had an experience they and their families will never forget, and it can be a great feeling to be on the plane home.
That was amazing. The whole thing was amazing because I was coming back to Ireland, like I wouldn't be expecting any roaring crowds. Like the first Irish team had already succeeded. I was coming back like in the plane, just set as, you know, what we call the standard class, and I was sitting down. But the first thing that I realized is this waitress came up like, "Can Pat Falvey please make himself known?" I put up my hand, and they brought down some champagne, and then they announced that I had just climbed Everest, and the whole plane stood up and were clapping. So therefore I was kind of, oh God, like, you know, I was ashamed, like, you know, but at the same time, like, I was delightful and just said my usual namaste and gratitude, thank you. But then as we were coming into Cork Airport, again, another surprise, like, so they said, look, you know, as the waitress came to me and they said, look, you know, we'd like you to be the first off and we'd like you to go to the back. And I'm going, what the fuck, like? And then, so when the plane landed, it was like I was ushered to the back like a celebrity. The door opened up. Christ, I looked out and there was a band, 2 bands, and there was, at the end of the stairs, there was my mum and dad. And as I came down the stairs, I could see that he had his Lord Mayor's outfit on, right?
Yeah.
And then he came down, and I have a lovely picture in the hall of it actually, like, which the press had taken, and then it was like, he came down and he goes, first he did his official duty. He says, I'll never forget it. He said, like, as the Lord Mayor and the first citizen of our city, I'm proud to invite, to welcome back one of its more former sons, right, okay, of the city. And I was like, fuck, that's amazing. But then he put his hand around me and, like, as you can see, I suppose, being authentic about it, I do use some language, right? But my dad too. We came from the building industry, so I'm not going to be unauthentic to say I never use it, right? Okay, but my dad just and he said, "Son, I fucking love you," right? And then my mom came over, you know, she pinned another Holy Spirit on me and said, "Son, like there you are, like you know, you made it, and only for the Holy Spirit you wouldn't have got there. I've been praying all the time." And I remember on the late show one time because I had 3 holy medals on me, and people came to me and they said, "There you are, like only for Saint Christopher." And I remember saying one time, and then I got killed for this. I said, "Jesus, Pat, I thought like I was elevated to the top when I came back and I had nothing to do with it myself," jokingly. But wasn't there about 15 complaints about the fact that I said I should get down on my knees thanking God? But anyway, that was very, very special. And then there was the city of Cork threw me a civic reception. And my dad was the host of that. He was kind of half afraid, like, you know, to do this, but all of the TDs got together and said no, so that was absolutely another amazing moment. And the other one is that I was hosted by the President of Ireland, like not one occasion, but on 3 occasions. And I had the privilege of her coming down here, actually climbing Carntool with me and staying in my home. So yeah, like the whole thing, like, is on Everest. It just brings back so much memories. And when I'm talking about it, I get excited about it. Because in doing these interviews, it actually brings back the memories. You know, like it's like a visual memory that comes back and about how it felt, you know, what the teams were like. You know, the history in itself is amazing. Hillary and Tenzing, Maori and Irvin, you know, like say, like did they get there? Did they not get there? Like, so it wasn't just the Nepalese people, the Sherpa, then the Tibetans, like the history of Tibet with China. You know, I've been in Lhasa, I've been in Kathmandu, the city of the 1,000 temples. You know, the culture of all of this area, outside the fact that the climate at all, like, is and has been amazing for me. I know for some people it's just the climb. For me, it's the interaction of the people, the stories, and even the followers. Like sometimes I think it's the followers give me the energy. It's like shoving a rocket up my backside, like, you know, and propelling me.
So Pat made it to the top and back down again, the second Irish climber to achieve this feat after the successful summit of Dawson-style Fox back in 1993. For many, that would be the end of the story, but not for Pat. He was to return to Nepal and the south side of Everest in 2003 and 2004, with a whole new group of Irish mountaineers determined to write their own story on Everest.
Yeah, well, what happened is, you know, you always have a what's next. Like people say, what do you do when you complete something? It's like I always said in all my lectures around the world, it's like, what's next? Like if I said it to you and you just went to, say, France, the next question would be, what's next, right? So to me, when I was on top of the mountain with Chomolungma, and I had a little talk to her, that's Goddess Mother of the Earth, and I was asking myself, what's next? And I really enjoyed it. And I said, well, here was the apprentice. I had now become the master because, like, I was a person in my own volition. And then I said, what's next? And I said, you know, what hasn't been done is someone that hasn't climbed Everest from the south and the north, right? And I said, I'd love to do that. So we formulated, and another friend of mine beat me to it, by the way, as in the world, right? So what happened was that it was then like no Irish team has climbed from the south side. So therefore I wanted to lead the first Irish team from the south side to the summit of Everest. And then on top of that, like, because my grandmother was a matriarch and she believed in women power, I said, for my grandmother and my soul, like, you know, it'd be great to have the first Irish female to climb Everest. So then talking at lectures, I'm putting out those 3 wishes, Claire O'Leary and Hannah Shields I turned up and so we'd like to do it too. We'd like to do that. And Claire just came into my kitchen again and said, she said, a couple of years before that, she's climbed Karen Tool with me and she said, do you think I could do Kilimanjaro? And I said, of course. So she came to Kilimanjaro with me. When she finished Kilimanjaro, she said, I know you want to get the first star, help the first Irish. And when I said that now, not get, help the first Irish female to the summit, right? I said, and she said, do you think I could do it? And I said, if you put in the training, yes. And if you're a part of a good team. And that was probably one of the greatest relationships I ever had with someone that was about to climb mountains.
Yeah.
Her dedication, her tenacity, her resilience, her capability of when she was asked to do something to pull it off, because we were actually putting all the logistics together ourselves. That's what I loved about working with Claire. No matter what we did, the medical kit, the food, eating 9,600 calories a day, it was just amazing. And she took it on. And like it was the same with Jerry McDonald and this and all the rest of the team as well. They were all very gregarious. And, some of them like would probably walk over your dead body to do it. But you need all of those people to be able to achieve something, right? But as a team then, like, we worked very well. As you know, that year we had Claire nearly died. Was going to the summit, and she's a gastroenterologist, and she got a stomach bug, and she had to return. Hannah Shields got within a couple of 100 meters of the summit, and she was a dentist, and she got frostnip or frostbite, so she had to go down. And I myself got pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, and thrombosis because we were in the death zone now for 2 nights without oxygen because the first attempt we made the night before didn't work. And now we were going to the summit, and what happened is when I got to the southeast ridge, the oxygen I picked up, there was a bit of ice stuck in the top of it. So I didn't realize I was getting pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, thrombosis at the time when I got to the south summit, but I was moving slow. And then Ger said to me, he says, what's wrong, mate? Because I would have been stronger, but the time was passing. And I said, look, go to the summit and I'll wait here for you. I was at the south summit, but my objective now was to get to help the first Irish team to get there. So we did. And then I was dying on the way back. Like I went in, I was in hypoxic and I was probably drunk. And when I was late, I decided when I was sitting there, I'll go to the summit. And then someone nearly fell and I just took him off the Hillary step. Like he just shot down past me and just caught him. And I said, what the fuck am I doing here? And I turned. And that was my summit attempt blown. And then I got up to the south summit, and then I couldn't see anything. I clapped onto that fixed rope. And I knew this from training with mountain rescue, right? That as long as I was onto the fixed rope, and I remember blindly like putting my Jumar, and like I learned how to do stuff blindfolded, and that helped me. And then I knew Mick had just gone down, and I knew Ger and Pemba Gelging were behind me. They couldn't do anything for me, and I knew that. But what they did is they stayed with me, and they said, come on, and visualization is amazing. Like, so they pumped into me like Pat, Brian and Patrick. Come on, Brian and Patrick can't leave him behind. And I stumbled and I fumbled and I tumbled all the way down to high camp. And I got to high camp and then I recovered and then we got out. But we had achieved the first Irish team on the south side of Everest.
The first Irish team on the south side of Everest. Irish mountaineers were now writing themselves into the history books, and Pat was playing a major role in this, even though for once the extreme altitude and environment of the death zone on Everest had gotten the better of him. So 2003, albeit successful in many ways, was tinged with disappointment. An Irish female had not made it to the top yet, nor had an Irish mountaineer summited from both sides. More reasons to go back again.
There was John Joyce, Claire, and myself. And John Joyce had been a base camp manager the year before. So he actually, and I wanted to keep the team small because the objective was in reality to have Claire, giving Claire a shot to get to the summit. If I had got to the summit, like that would have been the second bonus. And then John, in fairness to him, he wanted to summit himself, but basically because he was at the first time, he felt he could have been a first addition to the team, which he was. So it was small, smart, and fast.
Small, smart and fast. But it is still impossible to eliminate all the dangers. One of the most notorious and dangerous sections of the route on the Nepal side of Everest is the Khumbu Icefall, just above base camp on the Khumbu Glacier. The icefall is around 600 metres in height and is a tumbling waterfall of ice, moving roughly at about a metre a day. The movement of the icefall creates crevasses that often can only be passed through the use of ladders. Seracs, overhanging blocks of ice, can crash down at any time, often injuring or killing climbers in the wrong place at the wrong time. I asked Pat about the icefall.
Like basically, I think in that time, I think we went through it 8 or 10 times up and down the icefall because you see, we were doing a lot of stuff ourselves, carrying a lot of stuff, even though we had our Sherpa team. But part of our volition on this is that we would be as self-sufficient as possible. And by the way, that also made it cheap, right? You know, like if you keep doing expeditions like I'm doing them, you know, and basically this one, it wasn't hugely sponsored, right? So we knew, like, you see, at this stage, we knew we could get to Camp 4. Like, I knew I could get to the call, right? Okay. And then I knew I could get to the saddle. So therefore, I knew that I could get that far. And I knew when Claire gave up at Camp 4, right, that she had a bit, Camp 3, sorry, before we headed on to the South Call. She was strong, other than the fact she got a stomach bug. And she being a gastroenterologist, can you imagine the irony in all of this?
It's
Like,
totally.
it's a total irony. So, yeah, so we went back far faster, far quicker, far more focused. At that stage, I didn't have to worry about, you know, like, because we have to worry about the other objective, First Irish Team to the summit. So it's far more relaxed and far more efficient and far more knowledgeable. And that actually was super enjoyable. All I can say about my expeditions is I won't do them unless I'm enjoying them.
You certainly get the sense from Pat that this is his calling, that it's not really a job for him. He thoroughly enjoys every moment he spends in the mountains. 2004 was a year of firsts for Irish mountaineers, including the first and highest puck fada in the world. A puck fada is when players of hurling and camogie, two traditional sports played in Ireland, will puck or hit a slitter, which is the small ball used in hurling, over a mountain course of around 5 kilometres. Puck fada means long puck or hit, which Pat had taken to new heights on Everest.
The slitter went out over the Tibetan phase, right? Yeah, even though I know that you probably looked while ago and said, was that the slitter inside in the...
As long as there was two balls, so I
Yeah,
figured you...
so I got the one sign, but it's amazing. I suppose in my earlier years I'd have been a hurler, right? Also, in honour to Jerry MacDonald, in 2003, we were supposed to take the hurley to the top, and Jerry would have got the honour of hitting it, but Jerry hit it at the South Call. So there was something to be finished. So then I brought the hurley and the slitter to the top of the world, and I have some great footage of that. And the sad thing about the 2004 expedition is there was 15 of us reached the summit before died. You know, so like this was actually an amazing expedition. Now, there was none of my team died, but it shows you the cost. And again, like, it was a lovely expedition on the basis there wasn't too many people on the mountain. And I never forget, like, when we got to the summit, you know, and the summit is amazing, like, because when you look from the south side, you can really see it came from the bottom of the sea. Because when you're looking over at Lutzy, you know, you could see the strands of the sea as it was pushed up, you know, with the tectonic forces. And what was interesting there is when we got to the summit, I took the hurley and the slitter and whacked it off the top of the world. And that's a cultural thing as well, like, as you know, hurling being one of our national sports. And then I looked out and I could see what was happening. There was a storm coming in off the Bay of Bengal. The jet streams was descending on the mountain. And as we did that, I remember sitting with Claire and my Sherpa team, and they were there with the goddess mother of the earth. We were there as an Irish man now and an Irish woman. And we had just completed the first ascent of, having an Irish person climbing it from both sides, and also Claire being the first Irish female. And we had actually completed the previous year, the first Irish team from the south side, and hitting the highest puck fada in the world.
From that first trip up Mangerton with Valdine and the guys from Cork, Pat has been on a special journey that has taken him to the top of Everest twice, from the north and the south side, as well as many other peaks around the world. He has been involved in supporting many Irish mountaineers to achieve their dreams on the mountain, including the first Irish woman to get to the top. He has met many amazing people and visited some amazing places in his journey. I asked him to reflect a bit on this.
Well, I often ask myself that as a 67-year-old looking back to his 10-year-old self, his 20-year-old self, his 30-year-old self, what would I actually now tell myself? And I would say, fuck it, man, I'm lucky. I have had a great life. What would I have done different? I probably have done nothing different. What would I feel that I've done wrong? I think my greatest failure really was my family, because I paid the cost for my ambitions. Did I think that would happen initially? No, I didn't. So be careful for what you wish for, because you could get it. But also, now that I work on goal setting all around the world, I try to get people to ascertain what the costs of their goals are. Looking back, I would say I was a very selfish person, very ruthless person, very not nice person at times. And then what happened is, as time went by, I got empathy. The empathy came from travel. The empathy came for actually gratitude from actually seeing how lucky I was to have what I have. When I sit here, I pinch myself, I'm overlooking Loch Lean. I have a lovely house. People come in from all around the world. I have hot water when I want to. So what I've learned is that be grateful for what you have, because it could be a lot worse. Have I had problems? Yes, I've had. Have I had problems? Yes, I do. And the way I look at that, I'm not afraid of dying. And this is what loads of people are, and they do nothing then. I'm afraid of not living. I'm 67 years of age. I'm at the latter end of my life. I have aspirations and dreams and goals that is legacy based until I'm 120. My oncologist says I'll barely get to 80. So, I would say now I've learned, do what you want to do. Because most people on life here are only in for an average of 80 years. And then they die at 50%. And 50% then that gets to 80, and everybody knows what I'm talking about, could possibly be geriatrics. And then the other side of it is I hope to be 100-year-old, with enthusiasm and dreams. And one of the great questions I ask, because the Forever Young Club is a 50 to 90 year old person with similar mindsets. So I would say, hang around. You are the average of the 5 people you hang around with. So give me 5 people that are into adventure and travel and enthusiastic, inspiring, passionate, and that actually are opinionated, and hang out with them. And I don't want to hang out with boring old farts that actually have a negative attitude to life. And, whereas I will help them, but I definitely don't want to be hanging around with them. I think I've matured into what I would call, as my grandchildren would say now, they love their grandfather, which is me, by the way, their grandfather. And it's I think I've become a pussycat. I think they can twist me around their little fingers. I actually would say that my kids, would have said I was a tough bastard, right? But they love me. And they've seen also that I've matured. So I think it's never too late to change. Like, remember, like, I've been separated now, I think it's 32 years now. And yet we've learned actually to have total respect for each other, and we still love each other, right? Even though we both moved on. And I think the other thing I learned is about respect. I think sometimes in my earlier life, I was far, and like this happens with lots of younger people, and when you're young anyway, we're far too judgmental. You know, like if someone pisses us off, like we will have an opinion, and we will actually act on that opinion. Now, in my maturity, and I'd say in my maturity, I've learned there's very little badness in people. It's just misinterpretation. You know, like when we talk about everyone being divorced, and actually just some people just can't stand each other. For a point in time in our life, like, just chill out. You know, I have some friends going through bad divorces at the moment, saying that they hate their wife or their husbands. And there must have been a good time, and they destroy kids like by actually putting one up against the other. And I've seen it far too much. What I've learned about that, I've learned, like, you know, just, you know, things could be tough, but basically, in general, what happens, we fall out of love with people, or we move on to another threshold. So it's like not to try to hold the family in the best way that you can without causing conflict. As I said, I'm a Buddhist by philosophy. So therefore, I suppose what my whole life on that is to be the best that you can be, no matter what you are. My greatest ambition for the future, like, it's not maybe what you think, but it is to become the best grandfather that I can be. And it's probably going to be the hardest thing I ever did, because I wasn't the best father. And, like, you know, am I selfish still? Yes, I am. I still have all these things to do. One of the things I'd love to do, if it's a case before I die, whether I'll do it or not, is go to space. So I'm a dreamer, I'm a doer, I'm an achiever, and I want to keep it that way. And the other thing is, I respect, more so than ever now, my friends as well. Like, I have some great friends, like, you know, and mentors that I've had, and have that appreciation. So build those mentors and the people that have your back around you. For me, there's the likes of Joel Leary, Jerry Walsh, Jim Leonard, which would have been, you know, a huge inspiration to me in my earlier years. You know, he was director of Low Alpine. He became a very good friend. He's in his 80s now, and he's always had my back. And then the other thing I learned about life is having other people's backs. So I enjoy helping other people to have their backs in doing stuff, and that's what gives me the satisfaction of being Pat Falvey.
Pat Falvey, what a man. His exploits, his character, his way of thinking, everything has been fascinating to listen to, and I cannot thank Pat enough for the amount of time he gave to this interview. I didn't think it would end up as 4 episodes, but the expanse of the man's life and achievements deserve the time and space to cover them, and allow Pat to tell his story. As well as being generous with his time, Pat allowed me to stay at the wonderful Mountain Lodge, just outside Killarney in County Kerry. It's a fabulous place to visit, and I encourage you to check it out at patfalvey.com. You won't regret it. And try to get Pat to give you a tour of the house and a stunning collection of photos and memorabilia from his travels. Pat continues to run adventure trips to many places in Ireland and around the world, and all details can be found at patfalvey.com. I hope you enjoyed this mini-series on Pat. Look out for a new podcast coming your way next week, available wherever you get your podcasts. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and we also appreciate all comments to help us make the podcast even better. That's it for now. Stay safe and stay cool.